said, it's time for change. And I think few changes in our lifetime will be as significant as the change that we had in withdrawing from the European Union. So we thought today it'd be really interesting to listen to some of the experts and get some insights into what that might mean for our food and drink sector. So shortly we'll introduce you to Neil Parish MP. We'll then then give you a very brief update of the Southwest Food Hub and activity that we're up to. Then I'll introduce Oliver McEntyre from Barclays, followed by Tom Chartres-Moore from Scown, Steve Ashworth from Francis Clark, and Alex Stevens from the NFU. But we'll all give you a different perspective and delve into their particular areas of speciality, and hopefully leave you with a bit more information to enable you to plan your future on the other side of the Brexit negotiations. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Neil Parish from Farming Stock in Somerset. Neil is the Conservative MP for Tiverton and Honiton and chair of the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Selection Committee. He's also a passionate supporter of the Southwest Food Hub, and we've been very delighted and grateful with the amount of profile and momentum that he's building amongst fellow MPs, both locally and in Westminster. So I'd like to hand across to Neil.
Right, thank you, Greg, very much. It's a pleasure to talk at the Southwest Food Hub. And can I just mention that we have just launched another inquiry now into what's happening at the borders with the European Union. So if any of you in your businesses are exporting and having problems, we have called for evidence on that. So please give us evidence. So again, it's a great pleasure to be on this call today. I have met Greg through Anthony Magnew, MP, who suggested we got in touch. Greg then gave some excellent evidence to us on the EFRA Select Committee inquiry into public procurement of food. We launched this inquiry partly because of our Conservative manifesto commitment to reform public procurement rules. The manifesto says on page 42, when we leave the EU, we will be able to encourage the public sector to buy British and to support our farmers and reduce environmental costs. I actually went to Downing Street before the general election and watched them to try and put them into the manifesto. So I'm pleased it's there. So reforming public procurement rules so that we buy more British food has been a policy aim of the NFU and other organisations. The French are very good at eating and buying their own produce from cars to cheese. We should not copy the French on everything, especially not the vaccine rollout, but I would like to use the procurement system more acutely. We can reduce the distance that food travels and ensure more hospitals have our food, prison food, school meals are produced and eaten locally. It will be good for local business, good for environment, and good for the taxpayer too. And I pay tribute to what you've been doing through the Food Hub. The key will be persuading government and Treasury that local food can actually be cheaper or the same price for the public sector and therefore the taxpayer. And that's what, Greg, you were able to tell us at the evidence you gave that we actually can. I think you did a 6% saving in the Bath and North East Somerset one, and I think that is so good. So already in our committee inquiry, we've had the evidence that local food can be produced more cheaply. We also need to streamline process further to small businesses because the paperwork can be so off-putting. At one of our evidence sessions, we heard from a farmer near Bristol who said he had to do 19 pages of forms to supply the local council, and he'd been to university and he couldn't answer some of the questions. One of the other issues is that small businesses do not know when these contracts are coming up, and they often get tendered for every few years, so often miss out to the larger wholesalers. As we leave the EU, we can reform government buying rules through, the environmental land management schemes that we are going to produce now. We are taking away money from some of the money paid to farmers for food production. So we need to be able to sort of get that back into to farmers and food producers' pockets. One way for the government to help support food production in the future would be to help small businesses and food producers to access more government contracts. Our committee report is due shortly, so I better not tell you everything that's in there because I'm not allowed to. I don't want to prejudice any of its findings, but I will get told off. But you can tell the direction of travel that I think we're going in. So we can help the farmer or the business directly supplying food. Hopefully the school or hospital gets food, healthy food directly from farm, and there is a bit of savings to be had and perhaps a bit of a markup on the farmer's price. So we might be able to tick all the boxes. So I really think this is exciting. I think this is the moment to drive for it. And like I said, I think this is a very positive point at this stage to hand back to you, Greg. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Neil, and thanks again for your ongoing support. I think it's safe to say that food and agri-food in particular has never been so high on the agenda in the UK politics. And as it's been mentioned by the Cabinet Office, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to really dig in and change the way we look upon food supply to the public sector for good going forward. So it's great to have everybody seems to be pulling together to try and make it happen. Thanks very much, Neil, and we hope to involve you in future events as well. Thank you. So just moving on, what I should have done at the start, I get so paranoid because Ellen, who coordinates these things, makes it all happen, gives me a list of things that I must say, and I get punished if I don't. So I said all the things I should have said, but I should have introduced myself, Greg Parsons, as a founding member of the South West Food Hub. I should have introduced Glenn Woodcock, who's also sitting in the background, who's co-founder, and Ellen, who's on the call and bringing everything together, and Chrissy's story as well, who's in the background, making things happen as if by magic. Now, Ellen has said to me that she thinks she might have some problems showing my slides. If she does, I'm going to talk to you while she's still looking at Neil, I think. And Neil, are you muted, Neil? Just in case. I think.
I'll mute myself. Yeah.
Brilliant. And then I think. Ellen, right, I think that we've lost communications with Ellen for a moment. So I'll give you a brief overview without slides of the South West Food Hub and activity that we're up to currently. And what I would say is we've now mapped out a series of events that I'll touch on at the end of today's event, where we can further update you on our work to bring together this food hub and make sure that we open up the opportunities. But at the moment, our work's been focused around working with Crown Commercial Services, who have now committed to a set of timescales to deliver the Future Food Framework, which, as most of you will be aware, is a technology-based platform that will ease the flow of information and supply between public sector and small and medium-sized food producers. So the timescales being committed to, and our following procurements, the challenges for the platform to be up and running by early 2022. That is slightly delayed versus the original timescale, but that's been driven by Crown Commercial Services being drawn into some of the COVID response, track and trace, and also the vaccine rollout. So, I'm sure we're all very understanding of that. But what is the good news is that we have some confirmed in writing timescales which they will meet, and will bring this to life. We're also working closely with the National Farmers Union and a couple of the universities in the region to start to really pull together a clear picture of what the capacity and the capability is in the Southwest region, because it's something that's really we haven't got under the skin of. And what we've got to make sure first and foremost is if we do open up all this opportunity, we've got a supply chain there that can fulfill it. So that's work that we're doing with the likes of Gloucester and Exeter University. In terms of our work on the ground, we've got project managers such as Chrissy Stories in the background today, and working in the West of England Combined Authority region. We're working in the heart of the Southwest LEP region, and we're working in the Gloucestershire region, and that's talking to suppliers and buyers about the particular requirements that they have, about when the contracts are actually up for retender, and about the likelihood that they have to join in with this new way of buying. So that's all live, and we're building intelligence around that as well. We're also working very closely with DEFRA, because there is going to be a review of accreditation standards required to enter public sector procurement. There'll be a review of the government buying standards for food and of the balanced scorecard. And that's work that's live now and will probably take place over the course of the next year. But we are involved in that process, and also we've encouraged DEFRA to involve producers and farmers in that process too. So I'm delighted to say that DEFRA are going to join us for the next of these events and start to outline the work that they're about to embark upon. And finally, events such as this, we just want to get more and more people involved, and making sure the information is flowing. Our role in this is to make sure everybody who should know knows about what's happening with the Future Food Framework, and have the opportunity to get involved as deeply as they would like. So that's our role. I would encourage you all to sign up to our mailing list, which you can do through our website, and we'll leave those details at the end of this presentation. So I think that's keeping us to time is the end of my little slot there. So I'd like to move on and introduce our next speaker. Oliver McEntyre is the Regional Strategic Director for Barclays Bank in Agriculture. Oliver's from a farming background too, as many of our speakers today are. And also, I just thought, I was looking into the background a little bit, Oliver, I hope you don't mind. And I was looking at the words of one of your colleagues, Mark Southern, and he said that Brexit isn't a catalyst for change, Brexit is an accelerator for change. So on that point, I'd like to hand across to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Good afternoon, everybody. I probably didn't listen at school. I thought a catalyst was an accelerant, but anyway, let's not get into I have discussed that with Mark on many times. I'm also going to give myself an instant promotion, Greg. If I can't do it here, I can never get. I'm the National Strategy Director. I feel really important now. I'll have a word with Mark. I'm sure there must be an instant pay rise as well. So you're quite correct, Greg. Farming background and been involved in the industry in various guises as a farm manager, born and brought up on a farm. Consultancy, where I did an awful lot of diversification grants. Those of you who remember Rural Enterprise Scheme, processing and marketing grant under ERDP, and then joined the bank about 15 years ago. So all in all, I think if we, probably my core focus would be agriculture, and then clearly the agri-food sector is worth around £120 billion a year, and literally 4.5 million jobs, depending on which report you read. Clearly, this is a post-Brexit based sort of discussion and forum. And I think for us as an agricultural bank operating in the rural economy, farming is the absolute backbone of that, whether it's supplying into sort of food processors, food businesses, providing rural businesses with work, or even just employment. It is absolutely at the heart of everything we do. So coming into this sort of post-Brexit, the old transition period is finished. Now we're going into the new transition period that runs to 2028. The domestic agricultural bill that Neil's already touched on, is going to bring some huge changes to the farming community, and it's something we're very alive to. But we've got the Environmental Land Management Scheme coming up, which is going to see what was BPS, the sort of area subsidies, swinging into more sort of public money for public good sort of outlets through the ELM scheme. And actually those subsidies will be phased out. We've already had the announcement in November, December that area payments for farmers will be reduced by about 50% by 2024. But within that bill, there is an awful lot of positivity. There is capital grants, there's tech grants, there's going to be all sorts of tree planting and land management grants. But there's also going to be opportunities for new entrants to come into agriculture, which, those of you who've come, I often see that people come in from a food processing or product point of view, and then want to take that deeper to actually get their own place and start getting their farming business up and running to supply back into a processing business. Southwest Food Hub is a really interesting project, really interesting pilot, something I would fully buy into personally. But hopefully what it will do is it will give us a stronger rural economy, especially in the Southwest. But if it gets rolled out all over the UK, then even better. It'll be a stronger rural economy. It'll give stronger demand. And what you get when you get stronger demand is stronger markets. And what you get when you get stronger markets is stronger businesses. And those rural businesses, you know, I live in the northwest of England. It is not dissimilar to the southwest. It's quite a lot of disadvantaged land, quite a lot of small family farms. But we probably have a better infrastructure and transportation links. But, you know, it's a very similar story up here in the northwest of small bespoke businesses that frankly don't have very little chance of getting into public procurement. So hopefully what we can do through this project and then hopefully roll out nationally is become an industry that gets more dispersed markets. At the moment, most farmers have sort of 1-2 options for selling. It's either the market, it's either the dead stock trade, or a various amount of sort of milk processing companies. In a way, we're already seeing quite a lot of these dispersed markets crop up, whether it's through local processors or you know, milk vending machines at the end of farm lanes are a big hit at the minute, and I think will continue to grow. And that's before we even start getting into net zero, food miles and all the rest of it, because I think there is a bit of a mix up between domestic agricultural policy and the sort of NFU's target of 2040 net zero produce. So the fewer food miles we can do as a country, the easier it's going to be to meet some of these targets that will be hard, but they are very, very doable. I basically, if you consider sometime in my early teen years, I probably did my first full day's work on a farm, although if my father was here, he'd probably disagree and say it was nowhere near a full day's work for what he paid me. I think I've been involved in the industry for sort of 40 years now, and genuinely the next 10 years are going to be the most exciting that I think I'll have seen. And I'm getting to I'm 51 now, so I can now say, gosh, I wish I was in my 20s, because I think the next 20 or 30 years are going to be fantastic. So if there's more opportunities, stronger businesses, more opportunities to push products into public procurement and secure better markets, how can we help you as a bank? Well, we've got probably nearly 300 years of experience of lending into the farming market, and from that, the rural economy. But if you are going to start thinking about the expansion opportunities, then it's to be honest, I'm going to say it's really boring. It's about putting together a business plan. That business plan's got to be realistic. It's got to be based on your current performance. Yeah, we'll take into account if something's increasing in size. You know, there may be economies of scale in there, but it has to be realistic and it's got to be believable. And really interesting, I've lost count of the amount of times I've sat in front of farmers and rural businesses, and they don't seem to believe in their own business plan. You know, if you don't believe in it, why on earth is a bank going to believe in it? So hence, it's got to be realistic. It's got to be believable. You have absolutely got to sell it to your bank, because if your heart's not in it, then guess what? The bank's not going to probably put its money in it. And if possible, maybe have a plan B, just in case you may have identified some risks and perhaps some reasons why something may not happen. The other bit of advice I will give you is communicate really early with your bank. Banks, I always say, banks like a nervous horse. They don't like surprises. They don't need a phone call on a Monday saying somebody needs £500,000 by Friday. Really plan it ahead. Make contact with your local manager, preferably Barclays, obviously, but other banks are available, I gather. But just get talking about it, because your bank manager sees, you know, business after business after business. They have the experience and know what they're looking for if you are looking to borrow money. All sorts of different routes to borrow money, whether it's asset finance, mortgage, overdraft, and all sorts of structure, which I won't bore you with now. Otherwise, Greg's threatened to mute us out. Well, I think Ellen's threatened to mute us out if we go on too long. What I will say is, the more advice you can get, the better. And actually, you know, as a bank, if someone came to us and said, somebody's put this business plan together, but I've talked to my accountant, I've talked to my solicitor, I've talked to an advisor, I've talked to the NFU, you know, I've talked to Southwest Food Hub. That's not a weakness. That's an absolute strength, because you've recognised that you need to pull in those different specialisms in order to help your business succeed. So do talk to accountants, advisors, solicitors, and talk to other people who are in a similar situation, which will be another good thing, I think, that will come out of the Southwest Food Hub. With that, and within 2 minutes of time, Greg, I will hand back to you.
Brilliant, thanks, Oliver. I think that's you squeezed a lot in. And I think obviously we've got partnerships within the Southwest Food Hub that have supported us since the outset. Barclays, definitely stepped in to want to be involved. So, we'd like to obviously host some of that information you talked about on the website, make it available to people that are involved, and then, enable them to be able to contact yourselves or other banks if they're out there, and get some further support. But that's really insightful. I think what it reminds me of as well is not to dismiss the point, as well as thinking about your business, is how your business may link with neighbours or similar businesses to create a more efficient and larger opportunities. I think gone are the days when farmers and agricultural businesses should be jealous of what goes on next door. I think coming together is going to present more opportunities than that. But no, thank you very much. And as I say, probably hopefully the first of some more involvement with the South West Food Hub. So just before moving on to our next speaker, I did miss something, because I always do. And what we're going to ask is, who are you? We're going to run a poll. And we'd just like to know where you're from. So please don't think about it too much. Just pick a box that's most similar to what you do. Interested other, obviously, is there to bail out anybody who doesn't want to confess to what they do. And we'll just leave that up for a second. Okay, and I'm assuming that's going to disappear when I should continue, Ellen. Is that right? Or perhaps I could carry on, and in light of the time we're up against, I could start to introduce our next speaker. So we've got Tom Chartres-Moore. Chartres-Moore. That's almost as difficult to say, Tom, as the Future Food Framework for me. But there you go. Tom's from Scown, who have a reputation in this region for being extremely supportive of the food and drink sector. Tom also sits on the board of Food and Drink Devon, and also when questioned about, does he have a background in the area, surprisingly, he actually does. One of his first jobs was working for Sharps Brewery. So contrary to what we think of most legal people, Tom is your man if you want to organise a booze up in a brewery. So with that, Tom, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Greg. I think that's probably the only proper and normal job I've ever had. So I've been asked to speak a little bit about Brexit today, and there's so many things we could talk about. So I'm just going to focus on a few things. I'm going to assume that the majority of people here are not importing the majority of their products for sale from Europe into the UK. I'm imagining that most of the people here are going to be producers or somehow otherwise involved in production of food and drink in the UK. That would make sense, right? So the effect of Brexit has meant that we are now far more in control of what we do in our country than before, which is one of the intended outcomes of Brexit. It also means that a lot of what had happened in Europe has been copy-pasted into UK systems. So one of the things that I want to talk about is the Protected Designation of Origin and PGI. The PDO and the PGI, and I shan't spend any time trying to discern the two between them, because we'll just call them the same thing, basically mean that if you make something in a particular way or from a particular place, you can protect it and you can stop others from doing the same or similar. It's a bit, in some respects, like a trademark. So the Cornish pasty is an oft-cited example. And that means that the pasty has to be made in Cornwall, has to be crimped in a certain way, and has to contain some ingredients. But those ingredients do not need to be from Cornwall. That was one of the quirks of the Cornish pasty. Since the transformation into a single state, where we've left the European Union, there was originally some eagerly anticipated ability to start making our own champagne. Can you imagine that? A Somerset champagne. And there was some talk about what we would be able to do outside of the European PDO system. That hasn't transpired to be the case, and all of the EU protected designations of origin and geographical indicators have been effectively copy and pasted into the UK. And DEFRA, who have never before needed to operate such a complex system, have been tasked with operating the new system, which is called the UK Geographical Indicator System, or UKGI for short. Now, the UKGI system does proffer an interesting opportunity for food and drink businesses in the Southwest. Historically, obtaining PDO or PGI was a laborious, complex and bureaucratic process. I am not for 1 second suggesting it is no longer a complex and long-winded and bureaucratic process, but it is a different process. It is to some extent more straightforward, and it could give you greater control over, and as Greg rightly said, not just what you're doing, but what your area is doing, what you and your neighbours are doing. And this is something that I think is going to become a theme of the next maybe 5 or 10 years, which is more collaborative working. If you want to produce a product which you can sell at the right price, or you can keep control of, and it's not just your brand on it, it's the way you do it, or it's where it comes from, UKGI could be the route to go down. And we as a country have been absolutely, I mean, there is no other word for it really. We've been shit at this. We have done less than 90 PDOs and PGIs in the last 25 years. By contrast, the European Union have over 5,000 PGO and PDI protections across the states. So we need to catch up. If we are going to compete in our own turf, on our own terms, and if we want to compete into Europe, this has got to be something that businesses look at and seriously consider. And I think there is an element of pride that should be applied to this. I think if we are making something from our own area in our own way, we should be proud of it, and we should be making sure that we've got protection for it. The UKGI system is relatively new. It's not particularly expensive. It needs to be explored. I'm not for a moment suggesting everybody should do it, but I'm just flagging that it is new and it is exciting, and it could be a route to some real differentiators, not just in the domestic marketplace, which is obviously the key importance, but also when you go abroad. Because this is not a singular system, this is a multinational system. You can then go and take your UKGI and you can use it in Europe with further application. You can use it elsewhere, in Australia, in New Zealand, in Japan, in Canada. And I think the government probably have plans for it to go further than that. So it is an interesting opportunity, one that should be explored. Helpfully, DEFRA, because they're learning all of this at the same time as everybody else, have produced quite a lot of guidance. So you can read the DEFRA guidance on UKGI and you can get a feel for whether or not you should or shouldn't be doing it. But I would think every business that's in the business of producing food or drink should think about whether or not it's something they want to either collaborate with others to do in isolation, or whether it's something that they otherwise want to look at for another product or another market. So that's UKGI. The one other thing that I wanted to talk about, well, there's a couple of other things I wanted to talk about, was use of EU labels. This is a very easy one for every business to remember. Don't. So as of the 1st of January 2021, you shouldn't be using any EU labels unless you're regulated by an EU body. So for example, the Organic Association for EU is not an accredited association for the UK. So you should have your own organic label, which is the UK organic label, not the EU organic label. Of course, there is stock still out there, so get that sold as quickly as possible. And the other thing I wanted to talk about very, very quickly was trademark protection, which kind of segues on from all of these things, which is previously we could file an application to cover all member states. You can no longer file an application to cover all member states because we are not part of the EU. You have to file a UK application first, but you can then springboard into the European Union. So there is an opportunity for those who are thinking of going further afield. Get your ship-shape Bristol fashion business now in the UK sorted, and then get yourself into the European Union. Do not be so put off by the fact that some of these things have been put back by delay or a secondary step. Most of the time it's because you need to get that first step, that domestic step, done right first. And then my final point, which is the one I always bang on about with Greg, which is businesses often overlook their terms and conditions. Neil made a reference to 19 pages of forms that you had to fill out to sell a baby bell to a child. I totally understand that, and I think most lawyers would rejoice in the idea of using 190 pages to do the same thing. But I would urge businesses to have some coherent and comprehensible terms and conditions which they use in their business, and make sure that they are kept up to date, because legislation is changing probably quicker than it has ever done, certainly in my trading history, probably in the history of this firm, and it was founded in 1839. So your terms and conditions need to be understandable. They need to be able to tweak when they need to be tweaked, and also make sure you understand them. Make sure you know the rules of the game you play by, because if you're buying stuff in, if you're selling stuff on, if you don't know what they mean and how they work, you will be caught up and you will waste time on it. So it needs to be something that you live by, that really speaks to what your business does. And at that point, actually, if you've got your own terms and conditions and you want to go onto the Future Food Framework, I said that right, didn't I, Greg? Then you will be far better placed to understand what businesses are asking of you if you were, for example, going onto a tender portal and applying to provide baby bells to children. Oh, sorry, Greg, that was me. I am
Tom,
all done.
All within time, and you covered I'm amazed. I'm going to have to watch that back to make sure that you covered everything you said you would. But thanks very much. I mean, a couple of points raised there. Firstly, on the PGI PDO front, I'm sure there are others on this call that get fed up of going to, when we used to go to exhibitions and you roll up these massive stands trying to force port and parmesan and international hams down your throat, and you think, where are the UK ones, you know, and so hopefully, you know, in the future we can do a better job of that. But I think also, you know, many of us now as SME food businesses are selling online, you know, and that's becoming an increasingly important line of channel of opportunity for us. And having, you know, making sure that we've got the necessary legal cover within that is critical, really, and more so than that as well. It's actually a value in the business, you know, having these things, having your trademark sorted, having your terms and conditions sorted, the way you work sorted, is part of the assets of your business. And if your aspirations is that at some stage, you know, you want to sell your business or at least make it robust, then having all those things in place is an asset of your business, and that's how you should consider it. It's something worth investing in. Tom's going to love me saying that, because he knows that all his contact details are on our website, on our web hub. So, Tom, thanks very much. And again, we'll keep that line of communication going through the Southwest Food Hub, and we'll keep people up to speed as we can. So, without further ado, I shall move on to our next speaker, Steve Ashworth. Steve will tell you all about what he does with Francis Clark, but for the purposes of today, we're going to be talking about food. We're talking about food and drink, and I will always remember the day when I chipped up at the Bath and West Showground and thought, I'm sure I recognise that chef over there, but it can't be. And lo and behold, it was Steve. He's an award-winning chef, mad passionate about food, very active within the West of England Combined Authority as well. But today, Steve, you're going to talk to us about tax and other things related in this new world beyond Brexit. So over to you, Steve.
Oh, thanks for that, Greg. That's one heck of a build-up and everything. I'm also just thinking you've just had the banker, the solicitor, and now the accountant. This is just lined up for such a fun afternoon, isn't it? Really, from that point of view. And you've got another northerner, but I think Oliver said he was from the Ribble Valley earlier, and I'm from Burnley originally. But I'm well rooted now down in the southwest and in Taunton as we speak. So yes, I work for PKF Francis Clark. Accountants across the whole of the southwest and officers covering the whole of the area, and food and drink is one of our sector specialisms. I specialise in employment tax, but that just gives me an opportunity to talk to lots of businesses and gives me a free hand to talk to lots of food and drink businesses as well. I really just wanted to have a bit of a flit around today and bring in some of my other hats. Greg sort of already said you know, I do dabble in food with a little bit of a former award-winning amateur chef, you'll add in there, but and food and restaurant judge and various other things I do. I'm an ambassador for Hospitality Action, so I do a lot of support work and that for you know, across food and drink. And Brexit has brought, you know, other challenges to all our businesses at the moment. We've ended up with a UK and EU trade and cooperation agreement, which I'm sure you've all sat down and read from page to page in detail for a bit of fun. And from that, some of the areas that Oliver and Tom's already picked on, you've had to focus on your food labelling, marketing standards, what products you can actually export now. There's references to non-harmonized food products, another term to just roll off the tongues, but different regulations around chocolates and jams and honeys going into Europe. And then we've got the data protection. And if you're building your business as well and looking for employees and trying to sort of get your products and everything out there, you've got your employees. Where do you get your employees from now? Especially if you know, perhaps it's more challenging to bring them in from overseas. But the government website, it's actually very good. If you look at the government website and have a look for food and drink businesses working within the EU, and it will cover a lot of these topics and signpost you to give you some more information on where to go. Tied in with, you know, changes to tariffs and the likes and that, and whether tariffs are going to be imposed high, low, and everything that's come along. And you know, and for a sector which Oliver said right at the beginning, you know, 16-20% of total UK manufacturing comes out of food and drink, 100 billion turnover, massive number of employees, and a massive number of non-UK nationals as well working in the sector. There's been a real impact on food and drink, agriculture, dairy, fishing, all across. So whatever business is in, you've probably had some of this. But you know, that's brought the challenges. We've had a lot of challenges and everything, as we well and truly know, over the last 12 months. But you know, there's opportunities, and it brings those opportunities, and it's finding your way through the challenges and that which are there. And part of it, and we're looking at that to some extent, is start to look inward. You know, we've got this single state now. Let's look inward. Some people have gone, and you know, they've got a great opportunity maybe to export to what is Europe or even further worldwide now, but don't forget, you know, what we've got around us. Look to, you know, collaborations, working together. The best brand we probably have, and John Sheaves will jump up and down at this, is, you know, brand Southwest. You know, we've got such a larder that we can work on across the Southwest and tap into. So we're very good for where we are and where we're actually based. Looking as well for the future of the sector, and this is, you know, we need to encourage more young people to come in. So there's opportunities to grow our employment. Make use of the Kickstart scheme, which is available. They've simplified it recently. When it first came in, you have to have more than 30 employees to start be taken on to make use of it. But it's now simplified, and that sort of restriction and everything's no longer there. So you can start to engage and employ young people and get young people interested in the food sector. We're talking about public sector procurement. Great, make use of it. You know, get your products into the public sector. Speak to Greg, use the Southwest Food Hub to be able to do this. Just spinning off PDO and PGI as well. You know, food from England, food from the Southwest is what we should be talking about. That brand collaboration to be able to you know, to sell what we do so well in the Southwest is what is key to building your business. And one of the other areas as well is providing the customer experience, whether it's customers coming to buy from you, or if you sell direct to customers, giving them the experience. And there's lots of ways of thinking and doing that. So some of the focus and everything at the moment, trade, you know, but you've probably all gone through getting your EORIs if you export and everything, and registering to do that. The employment side of things, which is my sort of specialist area, not around immigration rules, but you've now got rules around immigration and who can come to and from the UK. But you've got new rules as regards tax and social security. If you've got people now working in Europe, and we're waiting to see how all these develop and fit in. On the finances side, which as an accountant, you know, I will say, speak to your bank as well. I'll get the plug in there for Barclays and that, go and speak to the bank. But, you know, your financing, you've got to look at it, especially if you are bringing anything in from Europe or sending anything to Europe. Have you got enough funding for holding stock and stock that's getting tied up? Is the cash flow there? Do you need to look at working capital loans, looking at your overdraft? Or finding some asset-based financing to actually work with to make sure you've got that cash flow coming in. You may have more debt going forward, so you need to be managing this. Look at your credit control systems. Look at where your bank account is. You know, do you need another bank account? Do you need to have a bank account overseas if you're trading there? A lot of businesses have moved production, and I don't want people to be doing this. You know, I said earlier, look inward, but maybe some of the movement and everything is to go overseas. But your important thing, you know, your business runs off cash flow. So if your cash flow isn't coming through, or it's coming through slower, that's one of the key areas to you know, you really do need to fix and focus on from the management of it. From a PKF Francis Clark point of view, hopefully some of you might be clients. I know a few of you on here actually are, and if you're not, perhaps, you know, always have a look at what we can do. We've produced some, if you go to our website, we have nice and easy at the top, a little button you can click on that says Brexit, and it'll take you to lots of information around VAT, customs and duties and things that you need to be thinking at. There's a particular focus on Brexit for agriculture, because we have a big agriculture farming team across Francis Clark. And we also have an area for Brexit for food and drink, which again is focusing on what you need to think about from a food and drink perspective for exporting. And also, like I say, my specialist area of globally mobile employees. You've got grants which you can still apply for, but it's the grants which have been coming out mainly from COVID around CBILS, and you've got until the end of March for that if you need any loans. Local restriction grants and everything is still available from the councils, but they're running out fairly rapidly. And well, bounce back loans, I think, ended at the end of January, so you've gone past that now. But you know, you need to look, and you need to look at your business and see what your business needs as to whether you actually want to make use of what are really, in many ways, COVID grants and loans. There's not a lot of money out there for the changes and everything for Brexit. There was some and is some money available, but again, there's not a lot of it left working with customs and declarations, which you could use for training grants and recruitment and IT improvement. So there was money available and everything for that, and we can certainly help you access some of that or think about it. And the other last area, because we do quite a lot on innovation as well, is just thinking about, you know, so many of the food businesses have been driven quicker than ever anticipated, probably, to be innovative and use technology. This greater use of within your businesses of using QR codes, maybe using and developing apps, digital marketing and digital services. I've seen so many businesses already starting to use virtual reality and augmented reality to now give that customer experience, build the brand and show the brand to the customers and everything. And if you're developing and doing something new, again, there may be opportunities through grants, R&D grants and that, to actually access some of those changes and some of that technology you're starting to bring into your business. And that's me, Greg.
Thanks, Steve. That's great. And again, there's one of our partners, Francis Clark, accessible through the Southwest Food Hub portal. And again, we'll include the links and relevant documentation as part of that. Steve, you might be disappointed. You won't be the most famous person from Burnley in the news today, because I don't know if you're aware, but Sean Dyche has been up to, I think he's gone viral talking about looky likeys.
Looky likeys, you can't beat a good looky likey. No, it's worth finding it and watching the 3 minutes for my my football club manager. Yes.
Thanks very much. Thank you. And speaking of fame and maybe fortune, Alex will tell us, but I'm going to introduce you to Alex Stevens. Alex was featured on Farming Today this morning, which, you know, for those of you, most of you in the food and drink and agricultural world, is part of a mainstay of our day. But Alex is also the regional policy manager for the NFU. And also he's been a great supporter of the Southwest Food Hub since the outset, and encouraged others in his organisation to come on board and really work in tandem with us as we move forward. So just going to hand over to Alex, and I'll see you up with the slides.
I am. Can you hear me okay, and can you see it all okay? Thumbs up. Yeah.
I can hear you and I can see it.
Pucker, that's good. So hello everybody, and it's great to see so many familiar names and faces on the screen, and some of my sort of food and farming heroes from across the region as well. So that's marvellous. And also really good that Oliver and Tom have covered some of the bits that I was going to just briefly mention. So it's not going to be quite as much death by PowerPoint as I was intending it to be. I thought I'd have you all keeled over by the end of it, but we won't quite be there. And really, I suppose the first thing I wanted to do was take us back a tiny bit to the NFU's role in terms of helping our farmers navigate EU exit. And that really started, I think, before the referendum, trying to explain, you know, implications of various scenarios and challenges for the industry. And as you'd expect, you know, Southwest is a very traditional farming area, a mixed farming area, and an area that relies not just on its agricultural output, but also its income from basic payment schemes, stewardship schemes, and all sorts of other support mechanisms. So we've sort of had the almost double, nearly triple whammy of being you know, hit by disruption to trade, disruption to availability of labour, but also changes to where farming incomes come from as well. So it's trying to navigate all of that is really difficult when you've got such a broad membership base. But that's the kind of the approach we've taken, and you know, our response really. And one of the first things that we did as a trade association was to launch a completely new directorate to look at international trade and EU exit, and to really make sure that we could not just give members the advice that they need, but also be able to lobby people like Neil and other MPs about the things that most affect your business and most impact you. And that's one of the things that we're really pushing hard now. It's, a lot of what we do is about advice and is about equipping our members, but also it's about flagging issues and challenges within supply chains, within new ways of working that MPs might not be aware of, or policymakers might not be aware of. Some of that we can do locally with LEPs and local government. Others requires more of a national role. So that's a bit of background really. But I'll keep skipping through. I mean, our key themes in terms of impact on farming businesses are, as you'd expect, trade, labour, and a future ag policy. And I suppose the other point to just get across is that, as well as those bits of change going on, and some of the challenges being faced by members, we're also trying to make sure that our potential members, non-members, but other food and farming businesses can get a bit of advice from us as well. So I've popped a link into the chat, but do have a look at our website. These are the kind of things you'll see on it. So updates on things like how challenging it is to move seed potatoes into Europe at the moment, i.e. not at all, and some of the other key issues we're seeing. And just to give you a flavour, I suppose, of some of the questions being asked of us. We've had textile producers and people in the wool industry in the southwest who are looking at small amounts of export and finding they're meeting challenges, not just in terms of red tape, but actually dealing with the usual delivery and courier companies they've worked with, who are concerned about being held up at border and concerned about challenges, so therefore passing on cost or refusing business in some cases. We're hearing about farmers who are trying to source sort of consumables on farm that are being held up at borders. And again, not because of any tariffs that are in place, it's just the extra bit of checking or the extra challenge of export that's crept up around EU exit, but also exacerbated by COVID too. So, for example, I spoke to a dairy farmer this morning who's got a new dairy system going in and is waiting for water pumps. That's the last thing he needs to get the system up and running. And they've been in Italy for quite some time and held up at the border. So those are some of the challenges. Also hearing about farmers looking for veterinary medicines, for example, and finding it challenging to get the ones they were after, having to shop around, get different makes, looking at different items, that sort of thing. So I suppose the headline really was there was a deal over Christmas, and you all know that, so I don't need to cover it. But effectively, our main concern was what happens if there's a no deal. And we were busy preparing the NFU. I was cancelling my annual leave, making sure that members of my team are there ready to help people and advise people. And it was bloody marvellous that we didn't have to do it. We've got a deal, but that doesn't mean that everything is quite as straightforward as it was before. And there are some concerns and some challenges around individual products, whether they meet criteria for being tariff-free, that sort of thing. And I suppose to give you an idea of what that might mean, what might not be tariff-free, it's about proving that the product you're selling originated in the UK. So that's about its ingredients, where they came from, that sort of thing. And you might have seen on the news a bit of fuss about Marks and Spencer's Percy pigs and whether they're a product that was of UK origin, with some of the ingredients coming from elsewhere, because then in terms of moving them from mainland GB into Northern Ireland, that created an issue because effectively the rules are almost on paper as they would be for a move into the rest of the EU. So some challenges around that, and it's down to each individual product. And if you are thinking of exporting something that is a composite of products from different countries of origin, even if you're processing and manufacturing the final finished product in the UK, do check and get some advice about whether that product is deemed of UK origin. We've heard about GIs, so I don't really need to cover those, or I think I just skipped past. So yeah, level playing field. So we've talked as well about much of the legislation that we're working with being ported across, but we will start to see some of that change. And anyone who reads our newsletters or sees sort of industry updates will have seen that there's about 1 million consultations that are live at the moment. One of the things we've always asked of government is anytime something changes, anytime a bit of legislation changes, you must consult the industry. So now they're doing that and we're seeing the brunt of it. So while we've got a level playing field-ish as things stand, that will begin to change, and you'll see things like the current consultation on gene editing, for example, which could end up making us deviate from that sort of path of alignment with the EU. So lots of challenges there, and lots of things likely to change over time. We talked GIs. I was involved in putting together the bid for the West Country PGI beef and lamb, so I can confirm that it's a marathon and not a sprint. But hopefully, as we begin to sort of manage that process fully within the UK, things should become a bit more streamlined and easier. And actually, it is a real opportunity. We might, because we don't see it in this country, and we don't see PGIs being used very readily, we're not so aware of what the marketing potential is in other countries. But I took our Southwest Livestock Board out to Italy, and we went through sort of rifling through a Carrefour supermarket and saw West Country PGI lamb on the shelves, and people were really interested because they understood the mark, they understood what it meant, and that there was something special about the product. And again, in terms of designations, we've covered organics a little bit, but really pleased that we've ended up getting some support and recognition for our organic certification. I'll keep skipping through because I think the biggie in terms of what we're concerned about next for farmers is understanding where their income is going to come from, and that's not just about food and drink export or food and drink production. Yes, we need to flag opportunities like Southwest Food Hub, and we need to make sure everyone's aware of that. But we also need to make sure those businesses continue to exist. And one of the big challenges is replacing some of that income that they're going to lose under BPS as we go through the years to come. And Oliver covered this a little bit. The global figure for reduction, 50% over the next 4 years, and you can see on the screen there how it's sort of phased over each year, and that it's graduated so that those who are the biggest claimants will lose more and quicker, a bit like sort of reverse income tax, I suppose. But that is the challenge ahead, and for many of our lowland beef and sheep producers, that's going to be probably 60%, 70% of their income. Less so if you're a more productive dairy farm, poultry unit, that sort of thing. But still a pretty significant shortfall to replace. And that's, if you put it in terms of what you can buy for that money, you're probably looking at, the value of a herd manager or, extra members of staff, that bit of kit that you were going to reinvest in and buy. So it is significant. And while there will be opportunities out there for members to be involved in Elm, it's not for everybody. And likewise, diversification is not for everybody. So some key decisions need to be made about how to become more productive and how to replace that income if you're going to. And we'll see some big changes in terms of what the money is used for. And we've talked a bit about Elm already and some of the productivity schemes, but I won't go into those now. But one of the key ones that I think presents an opportunity in some cases is going to be the lump sum payment. So that's the ability for in certain cases, businesses that are going to cease trading as farmers and going to be looking for some kind of exit strategy to have effectively all of their BPS and stewardship payment in one hit. Now, there's implications there for tax, there's implications there for handing on the business. And I would imagine that if you're thinking, well, all I'll do is then I'll pass it on to son or daughter, I'll change the business name and we'll keep going effectively as we are, I think that's probably not quite going to cut it and would require quite a bit of proof about the individuals leaving. Plus, there's no guarantee that if you're almost continuing the business just under a different name that you'd be able to claim for anything in the future. So it's an opportunity for some, a red herring perhaps in some cases, but I think it will see some change and it will help to instigate people moving in and out of the industry and changing the face of farming. I'll keep skipping through. We're going to see more support for productivity on farm, and that's a really key measure to help us make up for that shortfall of income lost, but also to make sure we're competitive on a global stage. You'll begin to see things like bespoke packages around management of slurry storage on farm, for example, research and development funding, innovation. And one of the things I normally talk about at sort of meetings like this is the gap in productivity with us compared to, say, Germany, the Netherlands, other countries. Our close competitors who've also been working under EU rules and CAP up until now, they invest more in research and development than us, but they also see much greater total factor productivity from farming. So that's the outputs you get for every input you put in. So a real challenge and something for us to aim for. So consultations over the year ahead, there's going to be millions of them. So keep an eye out for those and encourage farmers and businesses to respond. I will leave it there, if that's all right, Greg. I think I've probably done the 10 minutes.
That's brilliant. I think what that does, Alex, is to sort of whet the appetite for, I think, probably another session that dives deeper into, you know, what lies ahead for some of the agri-food businesses. So I think we'll try and stitch together an event over the next couple of months that specifically dives into elms and some of the changes that are coming out of the agricultural bill, if that's all right. But no, thanks very much. And we'll put that presentation as well online. I was just thinking there that probably that our audience is probably gagging to give us a rapturous round of applause for all the speakers today. They've been brilliant. But if you want to save that applause, I think there's a national clap for Tom Moore going on at 6 o'clock today. So just a prompter for that. Just before, and thanks to all of the speakers today for excellent insights into what we should do. We're just going to run a poll just to get a very quick reaction to a subject that's very dear to our hearts. So the question is, to what extent do you agree with the following statement? The Future Food Framework will provide a genuine opportunity for SMEs to supply more food and drink into the public sector. Just respond with your gut. I know we haven't focused in specifically on that subject today, but we're asking this at all of the events we do, and we hope that we see a continually improving picture. And just to remind people that we'll put the presentations, some summaries of these presentations up online. The recording of the event will be up online, and the contact details for all of our speakers. But thanks again to Neil, to Oliver, to Tom, Steve and Alex. Thanks to Ellen and Chrissy for coordinating things in the background. As I touched on earlier, our next event is going to be on the 10th of March. And that will be based around the DEFRA review of the National Buying Standards for Food and the Balanced Scorecard. It's our chance to be involved, so please come along to that one. Also, please sign up to the mailing list, because that's the way we'll keep you in touch with everything we're going on, and also your opportunity to influence what we do. Our role really is to find out all of the likely challenges that opening up public sector procurement to SME food and drink businesses are likely to encounter, anticipate those and prepare the sector for it, and where we can to help. So we're in this together, and I would urge you to join up, sign up and get involved. So for today's event, I think we pretty much done it within the timescale allowed. It's a lot to squeeze into an hour. Thank you for your attention if you're still with us. And we hope to see you again on the 10th of March. Thanks again to everybody. Thank you.